They say the void between stars is silent, but they are wrong. The void hums. It whispers with the aftershocks of dying suns, the wails of forgotten civilizations, and the faint echoes of things no mortal tongue can name. I am Inquisitor Severus Calix of the Ordo Xenos, and I have spent 3 decades listening to that hum through the steel bones of void ships and the tortured glass of Uspex arrays. Yet nothing in all my years prepared me for the night the void screamed. It began as a murmurous anomaly in the fringe sectors of the segmentum obscurus, a flicker in the warp that no astropath could map. I remember standing on the bridge of the Judicator's Lash, watching the hololithic starfield distort into a spiral of impossible geometry. The navigators called it a warp eddy, but the patterns were 2 precise spirals within spirals, like an intelligence carving runes into the fabric of space. The machine priests prayed to the Omnissiah, their metallic voices trembling as sensor readings climbed beyond comprehension. I could feel the hum through my armor, not like sound, but as a vibration in my bones, as if the void itself was drawing breath. My pilot whispered a litany of protection. The ship's lumen flickered, and for the briefest instant, I thought I saw eyes vast, cold, distant, staring from the dark between galaxies. The Judicator's Lash was a relic of the Great Crusade, a vessel older than the heresy itself. Its Gothic hull was draped in purity seals and rusted scriptures, its decks echoing with the steps of generations of martyrs. Yet, as we drifted toward the anomaly, even this ancient beast seemed to shudder like a wounded animal. The warp grew dense, heavy with pressure. Chronometers spun out of sequence. Crewmen bled from their noses. One of my serfs clawed his eyes out, screaming that the stars were whispering his true name. The Geller field buckled twice, flickering like candlelight. I almost ordered retreat, but then came the voice. It did not emerge from the Vox or the astropathic relay. It was inside me. Do you hear it? It said, calm and deep, not demonic, but vast, patient, ageless. The veil thins. The crusade begins. I fell to one knee, clutching the Aquila at my chest, whispering the Emperor's name through bloodied lips. The voice did not fade. It laughed, a soft, mournful sound, as if mocking faith itself. We broke the barrier an hour later. The warp gave way not to the calm of real space, but to something new, something outside understanding. Before us hung a sphere of light, suspended within darkness, a luminous wound in the cosmos. The edges rippled with iridescent color, like oil on water, forming and dissolving in shapes that defied geometry. Lightning crawled across its surface, each bolt illuminating impossible structures within, spires, fleets, maybe even worlds. This is not the warp, my navigator croaked. This is a trespass. His third eye wept black fluid. When I reached for my Uspex, it registered both infinite distance and immediate proximity. The machine priests fell silent, their prayers dissolving into static. And then, within that storm of light, I saw ships, sleek, silver, unfamiliar. They moved not by the rippling surge of warp drives, but as if sliding across gravity itself, vanishing and reappearing in bursts of blue brilliance. I counted dozens at first, then hundreds, then thousands, my lieutenant asked. I could not answer. The formations were disciplined, almost elegant. The vessels shone with energy signatures unlike anything in Imperial archives. But the strangest part was the sound. Through the void, through vacuum itself, came a low hum, rhythmic and resonant, as though every ship sang in harmony. It vibrated through the decks, into the lungs, into the heart. My tech priests screamed that their Usbex arrays were resonating uncontrollably, yet I told them not to silence it. I needed to hear, and beneath that hum, a second pulse emerged, slower, deeper, filled with wrath. The warp itself churned, answering the song. The two forces collided in unseen battle, one of light, one of shadow. Then came the first collision. A silver ship, vast as a city, drifted too close to the anomaly's surface. Its hull flared blue and vanished in an instant. In its place erupted something monstrous, tendrils of red lightning lashing out into space, forming claws, wings, shapes of living flame. They struck a nearby cruiser, rending it apart. My ship rocked from the shockwave. Hundreds died instantly. The comm channels filled with screams, human, mechanical, and something else entirely. And through it all, I felt that same voice whisper again, now laced with pain. They come from beyond, and they do not understand what awaits them. For the first time in years, I felt genuine terror. The Judicator's lash was a weapon of the Emperor, but against whatever was unfolding, we were a candle in a hurricane. I ordered a full system scan, desperate for logic. The readings made no sense. Two overlapping realities, bleeding together. The laws of physics twisted. Stars bent into impossible arcs. Void time collapsed into loops. I saw Imperial worlds flicker into existence, then vanish as if rewritten. My memories stuttered. I saw my own reflection in the hololith, older, then younger, then gone. I clenched my teeth and forced myself to focus. Report, I barked. What are we witnessing? Reality incursion, rasped Magos Vorex, his voice filtering through a burst of static. Dimensional collision event. Unknown resonance between warp field and another medium. Another medium. Unknown. But it feels alive. Alive. That word hung in my mind. The sphere pulsed again, brighter now, as if responding to observation. My crew screamed as shadows walked across the bridge, shadows that moved against the light. In that moment, I saw a shape emerge from the sphere, a humanoid figure, massive and radiant, cloaked in flowing light. It stepped forward as if walking upon the void. The figure raised its hand, and the flames around it stilled. I felt its gaze pierce through kilometers of adamantium and plasteel, straight into my skull. It was not the gaze of a god, but of a man who had seen too many wars. What do you see? Whispered my astropath. I see a soldier, I murmured. She frowned. I see a Jedi. The word meant nothing to me then, but it carried weight in her voice, ancient, reverent, fearful. The figure turned, igniting twin blades of pure light. The sphere behind him convulsed, screaming through the ether. Warp entities recoiled as if burned, and then the light shattered. A wave of psychic energy ripped through space, tearing open smaller rifts all around. Through each rift poured things both familiar and alien. Imperial frigates colliding with crescent-winged fighters. Demon forms meeting glowing sabers. Less fire and plasma clashing with something older, purer. It was war instant, total, unending. I gripped the command rail as the Judicator's lash was caught in the gravitational tide. The engines screamed. Power surged. We were being pulled toward the center. Through the chaos, the figure of light looked once more toward us. Our eyes met, and I felt not words, but emotion. Sorrow, resolve, warning, leave. Not through Vox, not through the warp, but through the Force itself. That was the first time I heard the term, unspoken, yet undeniable. The Force, not the Empyrean, not the soul storm of mankind, but something parallel, balanced, natural, alive. I did not understand it, but I could feel its purity and its futility before the endless hunger of chaos. I ordered reverse thrust. The Judicator's lash groaned, engines screaming as we clawed against the pull. The crew worked in terrified silence. Behind us, the anomaly roared, devouring ships from both sides. I saw an Imperial battleship, the Vigilant Monarch, engulfed in the storm, its cathedral towers ripped apart. And I saw a silver cruiser beside it, its shining hull melting, its crew screaming in a language I could not name. Two civilizations dying side by side, neither understanding the other. And above them, the warp laughed. It loved this. It feasted on the clash of realities, on fear, on faith, on the birth of confusion. We broke free at last, tumbling into the calmer void beyond the sphere. The stars looked wrong now, dimmer, closer, their constellations rewritten. My navigator was dead. My astropath was blind. The bridge was silent, except for the soft breathing of survivors. I looked through the viewport, and there, at the farthest edge of perception, the anomaly pulsed once more. A second sun had been born in the void, a harbinger, a wound that would not heal. I recorded my findings in the Inquisition log, though I knew they would call it madness. My hand shook as I wrote the final line. The veil is broken. The Force has met the warp, and the galaxy will burn for it. I sealed the log and looked once more into the void. Somewhere within that storm, the figure of light still fought, blades drawn, against the shadows of gods he could never comprehend. And I knew, deep within the marrow of my soul, that this was only the beginning. When the light faded, silence returned, but it was not peace. Silence in the void is a predator's breath, waiting before the strike. The Judicator's lash drifted on damaged engines, its decks dim, its crew ghosts among shadows. We had escaped the storm, or so I thought. The anomaly lay distant now, a burning sphere shrinking into a pinprick of sorrow among the stars. But its gravity had changed something in the warp around us. The immaterium no longer flowed like a river of madness. It shuddered, alive, resentful, aware that something alien had trespassed. I stood upon the bridge, staring at the scanners. The Mechanicus adepts chanted over static displays, their metallic voices breaking into fearful hymns. One of them turned to me, a trembling servo arm still sparking. "Inquisitor," he rasped, "something follows us." The words chilled me. I looked to the Auspex, expecting demons or warp predators, but what I saw froze my blood more completely. It was not a vessel in pursuit, but a shape adrift in the void, moving without propulsion, glowing faintly with blue light, human or something like it. The figure drifted closer, tumbling gently through nothingness. I ordered tractor beams to steady it. As it rotated, I saw a facepel.com, and framed by scorched robes of strange design. When the body entered our hangar, the lights dimmed, sensors flickered, and the warp quieted. For the first time in days, the psychic static that had tormented my astropaths fell silent. We carried the figure to the Medicae sanctum, a cathedral of steel and incense. There, under the crackle of broken lumen strips, I saw her more clearly, a woman, perhaps 30 standard years old, with hair like ash and a faint scar beneath one eye. Her robes were of fine weave, embroidered with symbols that no lex mechanic could translate. They pulsed with faint energy. The ship's Medicae examined her vitals. Pulse steady, oxygen normal. Not a demon, not a mutant, not any Xenos species known, but her presence bled warmth into the cold air, like the afterglow of a dying sun. When my psychic nulls approached, they stepped back immediately, complaining of dizziness. I ordered everyone out. Alone, I stood beside her bed, the sound of distant engines throbbing through the hull like a dying heartbeat. Her breathing was shallow, but her lips moved, forming words in a language older than Gothic. I activated my auto-transcriber. The device clicked, word, then displayed one line. The Force is wounded. The words made no sense, yet they filled me with dread. I reached toward her mind, brushing the edge of her thoughts with the gentlest touch of sanctioned telepathy. I expected resistance or chaos, perhaps the shriek of demonic influence. But what I felt was serenity, not absence, not corruption, but balance. A light untainted by the warp's foul mimicry. It was the opposite of psychic energy as we knew it. Where the warp fed on emotion, this energy calmed it. Where the warp twisted will, this energy aligned it. It felt alive. My concentration broke. My nose bled. I fell back, gasping. Her eyes opened. They were grain, the cold gray of stone or steel, but the soft shade of rain clouds before dawn. She looked at me, unafraid. "You are not of the Republic," she said softly. "Where am I?" "The segmentum obscurus," I replied. "Under authority of the Holy Inquisition." Her brow furrowed. "I don't know those names." She tried to sit up. Pain rippled through her body. "There was a battle. My ship," she paused, searching memory. "It burned. The stars changed." I nodded slowly. "You passed through a fracture between realities." She met my gaze, steady now. "Then this is not my galaxy." The words struck like a hammer. Another galaxy. The thought would have been heresy in any other context, yet here it rang true. I asked her name. She hesitated before answering. Cyrus Selmar, Knight of the She, stopped herself, then whispered of the Order. The word carried the weight of ritual. I pressed her. She only said, "We protect peace. We serve balance." I wanted to laugh. In the Imperium, peace was an illusion, balance a sin. But something in her tone silenced mockery. I had seen the eyes of psychers, of saints, of traitors, all carried madness. Hers carried sorrow. When I asked about her powers, she looked past me, into the shadows. "The Force binds all things," she murmured. "But it is fading here, dying. Your universe bleeds corruption. It screams in pain." I followed her gaze, half expecting a demon to emerge from the gloom. "What you call the warp," she continued, "is a wound. It feeds on the Force, twisting it. Your gods are echoes of that pain." Her words cut deep. I should have executed her for heresy on the spot. Yet, as she spoke, the air itself seemed to breathe differently, cleaner, lighter. Even the deck plates stopped trembling. I asked her about the figure of light I had seen in the breach. She fell silent for a long time, then said, "That was Master Vero." Her voice trembled with reverence. "He was one of the last. He held the rift so the fleet could escape, but he knew the cost." "What cost?" I pressed. She looked at me with a sadness that felt older than time. "He called it the final crusade." The words echoed like thunder in my mind. Crusade. In the Imperium, crusades are endless wars without victory. But she spoke it as if it were prophecy. Before I could question her further, alarms blared through the ship. The Vox crackled Inquisitor. "Contact on long-range Augur's Imperial transponders inbound." I felt both relief and dread. Reinforcements meant safety, but also scrutiny. The Inquisition does not forgive curiosity, and they would burn this woman without hesitation. I turned to her. "You must not speak when they arrive." She smiled faintly. "You fear your own?" "I fear ignorance," I said, "and we have weaponized it." Minutes later, the ship trembled as a frigate approached the St. Veridicus, a patrol vessel loyal to the Ordo Hereticus. Its captain hailed me, demanding inspection and status of anomalies. I ordered my crew to stall. Cyrus sat silently, her hands folded. Then she said, "You cannot hide me forever." "No," I admitted, "but perhaps long enough to understand what you are." She turned her gaze toward the viewport, where the stars shimmered faintly with warp residue. "You think the Emperor is your god," she said softly, "but gods are only the names you give to forces you cannot understand. I have felt your Emperor's shadow. It is not divine, is trapped." My hand moved instinctively to my bolt pistol. Her words were heresy beyond measure, but something in her tone froze me again. Not defiance, not arrogance, but pity. I holstered the weapon. "You would be wise not to speak that again, perhaps," she said. "But wisdom does not change truth." The St. Veridicus transmitted boarding coordinates. I sealed the Medicate sanctum and turned to leave. Cyrus's voice stopped me. "You've seen the breach," she said. "You've heard the voices. Tell me, when you looked into that storm, did you feel small?" "Yes," I admitted. She nodded. "Then you know why your gods fear us. Because we remind them they are not alone." Her words lingered as I walked down the corridor, the scent of incense and coolant filling the air. I felt the ship's heartbeat beneath my boots, slow, uncertain, alive. The anomaly was far behind us, yet somehow I sensed it was still watching. Perhaps it had never been a place, but a presence, a scar in reality that now lived within us both. As I prepared to meet the inquisitorial boarding party, I realized something that chilled me more than the warp itself. I had begun to believe her. The silence of the warp was absolute, the kind of silence that devours prayers and memory alike, until it cracked like glass beneath the weight of something vast. For 3 endless days, the Imperial fleet drifted along the bleeding skin of unreality. Engines dead, Geller fields flickering like fevered candles against the Black Sea. Every hour, the decks grew colder, every hymn of the Mechanicus weaker, as though the machine spirit itself held its breath in dread. I stood upon the command bridge of the Gloria Invictus, feeling the pressure of 1,000,000,000 whispered litanies from the hive worlds behind us, pressing into my Skullich One, a desperate plea for the Emperor's light, to reach them through the storm. Then the veil parted. Out of the red haze of the Immaterium rose a structure so luminous and wrong that the mind rejected it, even as the soul bowed before it. A temple of gold and white stone suspended in void, its spires bent into impossible geometry, its foundations woven from threads of living light. It was not the Emperor's palace, and yet my instincts screamed that it should be. The astropaths fell first. One by one, they began to convulse, blood weeping from their sockets, mouths forming the same word in a dozen forgotten tongues: balance. The navigator tore at his own third eye before collapsing, muttering of twin suns burning inside his skull. When I looked again, the structure was clearer. It was a Jedi temple, though no such thing could exist in our reality. It floated amid the wreckage of alien cities' fragmented towers, forests of crystal, fragments of ships that moved like ghosts. The air, if one could call it that, tripled with whispers of a language older than the warp. A voice entered my mind, not through sound, but through the marrow itself. You have come too far. I collapsed as pain speared through my consciousness. Around me, the bridge crew screamed, their bodies seizing, their minds invaded by visions. Through the agony, I saw flashes, wars fought in skies unfamiliar to me, blades of light crossing over oceans of stars, armies in white armor burning worlds in the name of a galactic order. And in the center of it all stood a figure cloaked in black, breathing like a dying god, his gaze filled with fire and loss. The name tore itself from the ecovator. When I awoke, I was in the Medicae Bay. The hum of the engines had returned, soft but wary, as though the ship itself had dreamed of something holy. Inquisitor Calix stood beside me, his face bloodless beneath the lumen glow. You saw it too, he whispered. A temple not of this galaxy. A sanctuary forged from thought. I nodded weakly. They called it the Temple of Balance, I managed. But it's breaking apart. Something is feeding on it. Calix turned toward the viewport. The warp outside was calmer now, though streaked with veins of blue light. Within that ocean drifted shapes, sleek, elegant, alien ships, unlike anything of the Mechanicus. One was crescent-shaped, pure silver, trimmed with azure, its surface alive with moving runes. I felt its gaze upon us. Then, impossibly, a sensation touched my mind. Serenity. They are watching, Jedi Calix murmured, voice trembling between awe and disbelief. The ghosts of another faith. His servo-skull hissed a litany of verification, finding no record of such craft in any Imperial archive. If they are real, he continued, then another galaxy has already fallen, and its refugees have fled into ours. The thought hollowed me, for in the static hum of the ship, I began to hear something that was not the Emperor's voice, a slow, rhythmic breathing that echoed through metal and bone alike. The Force, they called it, a tide that bound all life. Now it mingled with the warp, and neither could tell where one ended and the other began. Across the gulf, the silver ship pivoted and emitted a single pulse of light. It struck our hull not with force, but with memory. Every mind aboard the Invictus was flooded with visions. The shining world of Coruscant, endless spires, piercing blue skies, a republic collapsing into empire, a child burning beneath twin suns, and the rise of a machine god in black armor. The bridge filled with screams. Calix dropped to his knees, reciting the Emperor's litanies of protection. Yet even he faltered when confronted with this purity of alien belief. It is another form of devotion, he muttered. A faith without chains. The light faded. When our vision cleared, the Jedi vessel was gone, leaving behind a silhouette carved into the warp like a scar. Alarms blared. The sensors read a gravitational anomaly forming a headmass beyond calculation. I rushed to the viewport and witnessed the impossible. A world assembling itself from raw immaterium, half composed of durasteel and towers, half a nightmare of molten flesh and screaming architecture. Coruscant reborn through the warp, stitched to the corpse of a hive world. Lightning the size of continents arced between them, fusing city to horror. By the throne, Calix whispered. We stand at the intersection of realities. The Emperor's light flickered on the shrine at the bridge's heart. The Aquila's wings trembled as though alive. I felt warmth on my chest and looked down to see my Rosarius pulsing in rhythm with the warp flame outside. The machine priests began chanting in binary, attempting to stabilize the engines. Over the Vox came the voice of the Magos. The Geller field resists conversion. Reality itself is inconsistent. Calix turned to me. Prepare the inquisitorial beacon. If this corruption spreads, Holy Terra must be warned. I obeyed, though dread filled my every motion. Because the deeper I stared into that newborn world, the more I realized the horror was not invasion. The warp fed on belief, and the Force was belief made flesh. Each sought the other as flame seeks air. Across the forming planet, we saw Flashy's Imperial Titans walking beside figures wielding blades of light. Demons screaming as psychic energy met the serenity of the Force. Every clash birthed new monstrosities, stormtroopers with eyes like suns, servitors chanting Jedi mantras, astromech droids fused with servo arms of the Mechanicus. The boundaries of both realities were dying. Calix gripped the railing. This is not war, he said. It's judgment. Two creeds colliding, each certain it alone is divine. The ship shuddered violently. Outside, the warp itself folded inward, revealing a massive shape descending through the clouds of that hybrid world. It was a fortress in orbit, spherical, half mechanical, half organic, its core pulsing with both warp energy and the faint blue glow of kyber crystals. The ancient machine spirit within our systems screamed its name across the Vox, Death Star. Yet this was no mere weapon. Through its cracks bled golden light and the echo of chanting voices. It was the Emperor's visage remade in alien metal. Calix whispered a final prayer. Emperor, guide us, for we face your reflection. The bridge lights dimmed. In the silence that followed, I realized the truth that chilled even the soul of an inquisitor. The galaxy was no longer divided between light and darkness, but between those who could adapt and those who would be consumed by faiths too vast to comprehend. And somewhere, deep within that fusion of worlds, a shadow moved heavy, breathing, aware. They came not with thunder, but with light. Pale beams cut through the blood-red fog of the warp-like lances of dawn, piercing a grave. The Gloria Invictus trembled as the veil thinned, revealing shapes that should not have existed, sleek, silver vessels etched with runes of peace, their hulls pulsing like the skin of living creatures. At their head glided a single craft shaped like a crescent moon, radiant yet worn, its surface scarred with burn marks and fractures from 1,000 unseen wars. Its presence radiated serenity, but beneath that calm was something else, something ancient and wounded. The Vox systems crackled with static as an unfamiliar frequency cut through. Not binary, not high Gothic. A calm human voice, measured, filled with sorrow and strength. We come not as conquerors. The bridge fell silent. Inquisitor Calix motioned for silence, his eyes narrow with suspicion. "Identify yourself," he demanded into the mic, his tone laced with authority that could break worlds. The voice replied, "We are what remains of the Jedi Order, and you are trespassing in our death." The temperature on the bridge dropped as though the warp itself recoiled. Even the machine priests fell silent, their hymns faltering. Calix turned toward me, his expression unreadable. "Patch them through," he ordered. The holoprojector flickered to life, and a figure materialized, hooded, ghost-like, the faint blue shimmer of a Force apparition. A woman's face emerged from the light, marked by the exhaustion of centuries. Her eyes twin pools of calm, surrounded by endless sorrow. "I am Jedi Master Aranis's soul," she said softly, "and you have broken the barrier between worlds." Calix's jaw tightened. By decree of the Emperor, all Xenos and heretical entities are to be purged from his domain. His words rang hollow against the sight before us. She smiled, faintly, not mockery, but pity. "And yet, you do not even realize what you've unleashed." The bridge lights dimmed again, shadows lengthening. The ship's machine spirit groaned as though in pain. "We are both prisoners of the same storm," Aranis said. "Your warp feeds on fear and faith. Our force sustains itself through life and balance. When your Imperium tore open this rift, the two began to merge. Now, the warp dreams and the Force remembers." Calix took a step closer to the projection, his tone softening. "You speak of gods as if they were machinery. Perhaps they are," she whispered. "And perhaps your god is dreaming through mine." Without warning, the ship shuddered. Sirens howled as a gravitational surge pulled both fleets toward the half-formed world below. Through the viewport, we saw the hybrid planet in full half-gleaming metropolis, half-screaming nightmare, its surface flickering between Coruscant's skyline and a decaying hive spire. Towering monoliths of gold and black jutted from its crust, while rivers of molten light flowed between them. At the planet's heart, a colossal citadel stood, a fusion of Imperial Gothic and Jedi architecture, its twin towers forming the shape of a broken halo. "The Citadel of Convergence," Aranis said, her image trembling. "The Force and the Warp have chosen their meeting ground. Whoever controls it will control the union of both realities." Calix's voice was almost reverent. "A new holy terra, or a new eye of terror." The Vox crackled again, another voice, this one deeper, mechanized, steeped in wrath. "You speak of control as if you are not already consumed by it." The bridge lights flickered red. Another hologram flickered into existence beside Aranis's towering cloaked, its outline heavy and distorted. The breath came first, mechanical, rhythmic, oppressive. "Hiskich, Hisakich." Then the words, "You trespass in my galaxy, and bring your madness with you." Even the inquisitoring, yielding, unwavering Calix staggered a half-step back. Darth Vader's image loomed over the bridge, his presence radiating authority and sorrow like gravity itself. "Who are you to defy me?" Calix managed, voice trembling beneath his attempt at control. Vader's head tilted slightly. "I am the shadow of your Emperor." I am what he could have been if mercy had survived his ascension. The air grew heavy. I felt something clawing at my mind, two forces tearing at my consciousness, faith and will, both absolute, both right. Aranis turned to Vader's projection, her voice urgent. Anakin, no, that name no longer exists, he said, voice cold. Only power remains. His hologram turned its gaze to Calix. You and I are the same Inquisitor, bound by obedience, blinded by faith. The Emperor demands devotion. The dark side demands surrender. Both lead to ruin. Calix's eyes glowed faintly from the psychic pressure. You misunderstand, he said. Faith is not surrender. Faith is the weapon by which the weak defy oblivion. Vader's lightsaber ignited in the projection, crimson light washing over the bridge. Then prove it. The projection exploded into static. Moments later, the sensors screamed an energy surge from the planet below. Columns of blue and red light erupted from its surface, forming a storm that engulfed both fleets. We were caught in it, flung like debris between two tides of godhood. In that blinding chaos, I saw visions, millions of souls crying out across galaxies, stars dying, planets burning, and in their ashes to thrones forming, one of gold and bone, the other of obsidian and light. The Emperor and Vader, their visages merging until I could no longer tell one from the other. We must descend, Calix said, his voice distant, almost entranced. The truth lies within the citadel. The Gloria Invictus dove into the storm, its hull groaning as the Geller field flickered. Lightning, composed of psychic energy, struck the prow, forming faces that screamed and dissolved. Through the madness, I could see the Jedi vessels diving with us, their shields glowing faintly blue, their formation guided by unseen hands. The bridge filled with chanting Mechanicus hymns, overlapping with the serene hum of Jedi meditation echoing through the Vox. It was harmony and blasphemy intertwined. All ahead full, Calix ordered. Let faith be tested by fire. As we broke through the storm, the planet's surface came into view. City and nightmare fused seamlessly. Spires of durasteel grown like bone. Cathedrals hovering in defiance of gravity. Statues of saints and Jedi carved side by side. At the horizon loomed the citadel of convergence, its gates open, inviting, humming with the voices of both realities. Calix turned to me. Prepare the landing parties. One inquisitorial detachment, one diplomatic envoy. If this is to be the judgment of gods, let it witness both sides. The air was heavy with ozone and prophecy. As the dropships prepared for descent, I could not help but feel the weight of every star above us, watching. Somewhere within that storm, the Emperor stirred in the same breath. So did the Force. The two were no longer separate. The galaxy had become a mirror, and we were the cracks forming in its reflection. I once believed light and darkness were opposites, that one existed to erase the other. But as I stand upon the dying surface of Holy Terra, staring into a sky split between crimson warp storms and blinding silver starlight, I realize how naive that belief was. Light and dark are not enemies. They are hunger wearing different masks, the Force and the warp. Both endless, both consuming, and now both converging into one. The final crusade had begun. The city of Terra was gone. What remained was a skeletal carcass of gold and ash. the broken spires of the Imperial palace jutting from the crust like the bones of a long-dead god. I could see the bodies of custodians, those once immortal guardians, strewn across marble causeways, their auramite armor blackened by plasma burns and saber wounds. Beside them lay Jedi robes, scorched and torn, fluttering in the radioactive wind. The air itself shimmered with residual psionic tension. It sang, a faint choir of the dying force. The Emperor's throne room was no longer a sanctum, it had become a convergence point, a wound in reality. Above it, a vast sphere of light and shadow coiled and merged, the Force and the warp folding into one sentient storm. Lightning shaped like wings stretched across the horizon, and I could feel it whisper inside my skull. It spoke in every voice I had ever known: Inquisitors, Jedi Masters, even my own mother promising unity, salvation, silence. But not all of us had surrendered at the base of the ruined steps. Beneath the shattered Aquila stood the remnants of both universes, the broken, the heretics, the survivors. A single custodian, his once golden armor now scarred, black rested his blade across his knee. His name was Arion Valkar, last of the companions. Beside him knelt a hooded woman whose robes bore both Imperial sigils and the faint blue glow of a Jedi Knight's insignia. Her name was Cerise von Wands, a Padawan, now something else entirely. And between them burned a dying hololith, displaying the last transmission of the Mechanicus. Reality is collapsing. The Astronomicon is reversing polarity. The warp is no longer separate, is here. I remember Arion turning to Us's voice, metallic, Tom. Then we end it here. Around him, survivors from both sides gathered. Astartes from shattered chapters, their gene seed corrupted yet defiant. Rebel stormtroopers, their blasters fused to lasguns by makeshift tech priests. A Sith Lord with a cauterized wound across his face, his red blade now flickering beside a broken lightsaber that once belonged to his enemy. They came not as warriors of factions, but as mortals standing before apocalypse. For the first time in 1,000,000 years, the galaxy had unity born not of faith, but of fear. The plan was madness, and yet it was all we had. Cerise explained that the Force, Nexus, this merging of the warp and Force, had a core, a consciousness, a forming will that sought to overwrite both universes. It fed upon fear, devotion, and memory. If we could cut through to its core and sever its anchor, the Emperor's psychic remains, we might halt the fusion. But it meant entering the storm itself. The march toward the throne room felt endless. Every step took us closer to blinding radiance. Every breath filled our lungs with static. We passed through halls where reality had forgotten what shape it was supposed to hold. Statues bled molten gold. Voxcasters whispered in forgotten tongues. Time folded back upon itself. Sometimes I saw us walking ahead of ourselves, sometimes behind, and through it all, Cerise whispered Jedi mantras beneath her breath, her voice trembling as she tried to center her mind. When we reached the Golden Throne, we found no Emperor, only his shell, a corpse of light suspended upon a mechanical throne that no longer functioned. His skull was fractured, and inside it burned something neither human nor divine. It pulsed like a heartbeat made of galaxies, and from it radiated tendrils of both warp fire and luminous plasma. The newborn god, the child of both realms, was nearly complete. Arion raised his spear, his voice a thunderclap. By the throne that was, by the stars that will die, strike true. We charged. Blades ignited, bolters roared. Force lightning danced across ceramite armor. The storm reacted instantly, birthing legions of echoes phantoms made of both warp and force, reflections of everyone we had ever slain. I saw my own mentor among them, his face serene as he impaled me with a blade made of memory. Cerise screamed and hurled him away, her own saber-cleaving light itself. The Sith beside her unleashed a storm of red and violet arcs, howling in agony as his own shadow devoured him. Every blow we struck seemed to slow the storm's pulse, but it fought back through whispers, illusions, promises. It showed me a vision of peace, a galaxy where the Jedi served the Emperor, where the Imperium knew no heresy, where the warp was tamed and the Force eternal. For a moment, I wanted it. For a moment, I believed. Then Cirrus' hand gripped mine. "Don't you see?" she cried over the thunder. "It's showing us paradise, so we'll stop fighting. It feeds on obedience." That broke the spell. Together, we pressed on Astartes, chanting liturgies, while stormtroopers recited ancient oaths. The walls of the palace cracked under the psychic pressure, and beyond them, the void screamed as reality itself began to tear. At last, we reached the core. It was a sphere of blinding light, half golden, half blue, rotating upon the remains of the Emperor's heart. Arion thrust his spear into it, but the storm retaliated, vaporizing half his armor. Cerise staggered forward, raising her saber. "We can't destroy it," she whispered, tears cutting through the ash on her face. "We have to contain it." She turned to me, pressed her hand against my chest, and I felt the force, the warp pour into me. "You'll carry it," she said softly. "You'll be the seal." Before I could speak, she ignited her saber and plunged it into the core. The explosion was soundless. Light engulfed everything. I felt her presence vanish, her essence fusing into the psychic fabric of the storm. Arion fell to his knees, his armor melting into the floor as he looked skyward. The light collapsed inward, and for a heartbeat, I saw the child of both realms scream a soundless wail that echoed through every molecule of existence before vanishing. When I awoke, the storm was gone. The sky above Terra was black, starless, silent. The Force was different, quieter. The warp still existed, but it was thin, restrained, as if mourning. Around me lay the ruins of both armies, all burned to ash. Arion was gone. Cerise was gone, and I, whatever I was now, stood alone, feeling the hum of something inside me. The seal, the last echo of two realities that could no longer coexist. I looked to the sky, and in that emptiness, I thought I saw twin suns flicker, one golden, one blue before vanishing beyond the void. Perhaps peace had been achieved. Or perhaps it was only the calm before the next creation. There are no stars anymore. Not really. What I see scattered across the void are embers, reflections of what once burned bright and holy. The galaxy, or what remains of it, drifts like a corpse through the vacuum. The Astronomicon no longer burns. The hyperspace lanes are dead rivers of glass. The Force, once a song of infinite threads, now whispers like a dying wind. And yet I walk still across the dust of a million worlds, guided by echoes of memory. My name no longer matters. Perhaps it never did. I am merely the echo of the war that should never have been. Terra lies in ruin behind me, its countenance fractured by divine fire. The One's golden palace is nothing more than a jagged silhouette against a gray horizon. The Emperor's throne emptied, silent rests at the center of a crater so vast it seems to swallow the planet itself. Above it, a faint shimmer marks the wound where two universes once touched. Sometimes, if I stare long enough, I see shapes moving within that shimmer, faint blue robes, a flicker of gold armor, a flash of a red blade, ghosts of the Crusade, shadows of the final hour. The Force hums within me, broken and uneven. It is no longer what the Jedi knew, nor the Astartes, nor the warp-touched heretics who tried to master it. It is a remnant and uneasy truce between light and darkness. Sometimes it comforts me. Other times it hungers. Cerise's voice still lingers there, gentle and distant. "You'll carry it," she had said, before her light consumed the storm. And I do, every moment, every breath. The seal she forged now beats where my heart once did. I can feel it, pulsing, a cold, rhythmic reminder that I am both prisoner and warden of what remains. The galaxy is not dead, not yet. In the ruins of Cadia's orbit, I found the remnants of an Imperial frigate's hull fused to the skeletal remains of a Mon Calamari cruiser. Inside, I discovered survivors, humans, even one small, wrinkled creature who spoke in riddles about balance and loss. They call me the last saint, though I am no such thing. I bring them light in the darkness, a flicker of the Force to warm their camps, a ripple of psychic energy to keep the void storms away. They kneel when I pass. It disgusts me, yet I cannot blame them. Even after the gods die, mortals still crave something to worship. One night, as the void shimmered beyond the ship's fractured glass, a child asked me a question. "Mister," he said, "who won?" I looked at him and wanted to tell the truth, that no one did, that victory is an illusion carved by those too proud to accept loss. But instead, I said, we did, because he needed hope more than he needed truth. Days turned to years. The survivors spread, scavenging through fractured systems. The ruins of Coruscant float in orbit around a dying star. Holy Terra drifts near the edge of the maelstrom, its gravity failing. Somewhere in the void, the shattered Death Star orbits a silent moon of Mars. The two universes are now one, their debris intertwined, their timelines fused like melted metal. No more Jedi, no more Imperium, only the fragments of civilizations too vast to comprehend, reduced to myth. I have seen strange things since the merging. On the ash plains of Ulanor, a band of scavengers found a creature with black eyes and golden skin, a hybrid of human and something older, born from the storm's residue. It spoke in two voices, saying it remembered the moment of light and the name Cirrus. I buried it myself under the ruins of a cathedral that no longer had a god. On another world, I encountered machines, neither droids nor servitors, that still followed their ancient commands. They worshipped the void itself, whispering to it like monks at prayer. When I touched one, I saw a vision, a world being reborn, its oceans blue once more, its skies clear of war. But the voice that accompanied it was not kind. It said, "Every creation requires a new sacrifice." I sometimes wonder if that is the curse Cerise left me, to be the witness to what comes after. The Force, the warp, the hybrid essence within MIT wants to create again. I can feel it, testing the boundaries of my flesh, trying to breathe worlds into being, to shape something new from the ruin. But I resist, because I remember what creation costs. I remember the screams, the devotion, the fire that consumed everything holy and wicked alike. Still, the temptation grows. There are moments when I kneel before the void and feel Hercerus like a faint warmth upon my cheek. She whispers through the silence, not as a ghost, but as something vaster. She tells me it isn't over, that life, even in damnation, seeks to begin again. I tell her I am tired, that perhaps oblivion is mercy, but she only laughs, soft and sorrowful. You don't understand, she says. Oblivion is the beginning. The survivors have begun to build shrines, again monuments of stone and metal carved into the shapes of angels and starships. They call them echoes. They believe these statues protect them. I watch them pray and feel something twist within me. Is this how it always begins? Faith, worship, obedience, the cycle repeating in a different form. I cannot allow it. Not again. So, tonight, beneath the dead stars, I walk alone to the edge of the maelstrom. The air here hums with static. The light bends in strange directions. This is where the veil is thinnest, where the last remnants of the storm's heart still whisper through reality. I kneel, place my hand on the ground, and feel the pulse of the seal within my chest sync with the rhythm of the void. My skin glows faintly gold and blue. The Force stirs. The warp answers. For a moment, I see all things past, future, possible. I see Anakin Skywalker's tears on Mustafar, the Emperor's dying breath upon the golden throne, the burning of Cadia, the fall of Coruscant, the laughter of gods who should not exist. And I see a single truth, burning bright and cruel, that both universes were never meant to exist apart. They were two halves of the same dream, light and dark, order and chaos forever doomed to meet. If I open myself fully, I could remake it all, bring back the stars, the Jedi, the Imperium, everything. I could be the new god of the new age. The temptation is exquisite, like drowning in sunlight. But I remember Cerie's face, her final words. You'll carry it. She did not mean power. She meant burden. The memory of what must never return. So I take a breath, and I do the unthinkable. I pull the seal open. The light floods outward, tearing through my veins, my flesh, my soul. I feel the storm awaken one last time. The void screams as I let the energy release, unraveling itself across creation. The Force collapses. The warp folds inward. Reality shakes, groans, and begins to fade. I fall to my knees, smiling through the agony. The last light before the abyss, and then there is silence. Only one thought remains as everything dissolves into white. May no one ever dream of gods again.